Good morning, good day, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Ho tjhaba sa moshweshwe Lehlomela Lesotho ba heso. Welcome to another exciting and always insightful episode of Lesotho's Investment Case podcast. I'm your host, CBL. And today we have a very special guest. We have in the studio with us the first Deputy Governor of the Central Bank of Lesotho, Lehlomela Mohapi, ladies and gentlemen. A warm welcome to you, Ndadi, and thank you for stopping by and agreeing to chat to us. We are looking forward to an insightful conversation.
Thank you, Ndadi, and let me also align myself and say greetings to your viewers and listeners wherever they may be. And I say you have already put me under immense pressure, saying I'm a special guest. And nevertheless, I'm happy to be here. And hopefully, what I will say will be insightful, because I think that is what you said, that we want insight. So
perfect. That all our guests are very special. I think we can get right into it. So Ndadi Mohapi, a lot of times people see Ndadi Mohapi as the first deputy governor of the Central Bank of Lesotho, and that's a huge responsibility. You are deciding and leading our monetary policy. But not a lot of us, at least in the audience, know how this started. So we are always curious on the backstory and how this all become what it is now. So we try to connect the beginning to now. And of course, we appreciate that a career journey is not a linear one. But can you share with our audience how it all started? Maybe reflect on your days at the National University of Lesotho as a student, why you made a career choice or study program. Why was it economics? Why was it not engineering? Why was it not music? What were your aspirations and expectations back then? Which maybe we can try to connect with how your career has unfolded thus far.
That's interesting, and it started way back in '94. I was in high school at the time, and I think Lesotho had just transitioned into a democratic dispensation, and I was listening to Radio Lesotho at the time. The second finance minister was being appointed. I remember very well. It was Dr. Lehlomela. And so here I am listening to the radio, and the profile of Dr. Lehlomela is being read on radio, and say, this is the incoming Minister of Finance. And my 16-year-old self at the time was, wow. So this guy is going to oversee like the money of this whole country. And then it was like, I want to be like that guy when I grow up. And so one of the things that struck me at the time was that he's an economist. I think a list of 3 degrees were read out aloud. He's holding a bachelor's degree from the University of Lesotho, a master's degree, a doctorate, all in economics. I said, that's what I want to do. I'm going to do that. So that's how it started. I think I was in Form D at the time. And then, so going into Form E, my mind was set.
Excellent.
Whatever happens, I'm going to study economy. I want to be like that guy. Yeah.
And you did get accepted into the economics program at the National University of Lesotho.
Thankfully, yes.
What were your expectations going in and the reality going out after? Was it the 4-year, 3-year program?
It was a 4-year program. It was a 4-year program. So I think I had the view that most people have about economics, that it's about money. I'm going to learn about money. And then we are in an orientation program, and then so the lecturers are coming and explaining. And then the guy who was explaining economics was saying, buying an apple is an economic decision. And I was so deflated. Say, hang on. Buying an apple, I'm here to study about money, and this guy is talking about buying an apple as an economic decision. And I was a bit discouraged, but I said, well, let's go in and see. And so, but then the 4 years went by, did relatively well. And then so well that the university saw it fit to say, look, this guy, we think this guy is quite good, and so we are not going to let him go. So I never left NUL after graduating. Immediately after that, I was retained as what is called a teaching assistant in the economics department. I was there in that capacity for 2 years. But then I was given full responsibility to say, this is a class that you're going to teach. It's yours. You are not going to assist any lecturer. It's you. And so that's how it started.
Okay. Before we get into your educating, you being a lecturer, one of the reasons why we requested your presence here in the Lehlomela is because a lot of times you have almost two extremes. So on one end, you have your practitioners in the economic sector, and what you have there is when they interact with the average Mosotho, a lot of times we tend to be fancy with our vocabulary, and we use a lot of jargon, and unfortunately, the man on the street quickly switches off and finds economics and financial system as a whole intimidating. All right, that's one side of it. On the other side, the far end, you have your academics and your educators, and the biggest criticism on that aspect is the lecturers or the academic sector is too theoretical or abstract, and the criticism there is they lack that practicability and relevance to what's happening on the ground. But you in the day, Mohapi, you have a fantastic blend of the two, because you are now practicing, you are now drafting and influencing and leading our financial and monetary policy, but you have a background in lecturing. You, as you highlighted just now, you educated. That means you went through the teaching process. You know how to educate, you know how to teach. So I want this conversation to be informational. I want it to be empowering to our audience in a way that it simplifies the economic world, the world of economics, the world of finance, the world of monetary policy, so that the man on the street relates to it. And I think that not a lot of people have that nice combination. So I'm hoping at the end of this session, our audience will benefit greatly from that combination of practicing in the industry as well as being an educator. So, as an educator, off the record, you told me education or educating doesn't leave you.
No, it
stays
doesn't.
with you.
It doesn't.
I'm curious as to your views on Lesotho's education sector, and I want to leave it as broad as that, because I want you to comment on its vibrancy, its dynamism, its ability to enable. What's your view on our education system, on our curriculum? And you can go from primary all the way to high level, just to get a sense of what you think of our education system.
Yeah, as you said, I don't know if I've been fortunate to be on both ends, but let me tell you that even as I was in academia, I think I spent quite a bit of time thinking that the way we teach economics is not perhaps as it should be. This was informed by my own struggle. As I told you, I was retained as a teaching assistant, and then I was told you have to prepare now to go for further studies. And then arrangements were made. I applied for schools in the UK, in Canada. I got admission in both UK and Canada, 2 universities in the UK. And then I spent more than a year just familiarizing myself with how economics is taught in those countries, and then realizing that what I have is hardly adequate. Not in terms of content or concept, but in terms of the sophistication, the scientific sophistication. So I immediately realized that those guys, they are treating the subject as a science. It's a science that the level of sophistication is something I've never seen before. I'm not prepared for. And here I am told you have to prepare to go. So my preparing to go was preparing myself to be able to cope with whatever I'm going to find over there. And the sophistication I'm talking about is mathematical sophistication, statistical sophistication, computing sophistication. All those things were hardly part of, in terms of depth and level of my undergraduate curriculum. So I had to sit down and really teach myself some complex mathematics, complex statistics for over a year, just so that I feel prepared enough to be able to make it. As fate would have it, I was accepted into a fairly technical program of economics and econometrics, a combination program of economics and econometrics at the University of Manchester, and that is the program I chose. I got there. There's a bunch of us in that program, and there's a big group that is doing your masters in economics. And then the programs are being explained, and then our group is getting smaller and smaller as the tutors are explaining what is involved. So I sort of stayed and didn't drop out at registration stage.
This is barely a month, just
a week or so. We are trying to register for programs here, and I'm scared to the bone. So we leave the registration hall. I go straight to the tutor's office. I say, I don't think I'm prepared. I don't think I'm ready for this program. But I want to understand exactly what is involved. I said, but you explained everything. Why do you think you're not ready? I said, my mathematical preparation is not, I doubt my mathematical preparation. So the guy goes to a shelf like this, from that wall to that. These are mathematics books. These are statistics books. These are econometrics. Are you familiar with any of these books? I said, a few of them. And then he picks one randomly. Have you used this one? Unfortunately, it was the one I used in my own self-study. So I have covered quite a bit of this book. If you are familiar with the contents of this book, you should be able to cope. And I said, okay, let me start. So to put things in perspective, there were 72 students at the final registration, 72 economics, 7 combination. So I was part of the 7. We went into the program. It was quite difficult. I think 4 of us made it to the end. And then I come back bruised, totally bruised. And then when I come back, my mission was very simple. I don't want anyone to face those struggles. So I went about teaching the way that my students would be prepared to go anywhere in the world, get into any economics class in the world, and cope. And so that was my first philosophy of teaching economics. That and obviously that makes things a bit complicated, a bit hard for the students. But I had some nice testimonies of 2 guys who went to Leeds, and then they were sending me emails. Sir, we are using your econometrics lecture notes here, and everyone wants to copy them, and we seem to be the stars in the econometrics class. And said, yes. And so I was happy with that. So that is the theoretical aspect. That even in that spectrum, even in that setting, you still have the spectrum in there that you do things or you do things in a much more complex, much more rigorous way. And so, but so, during that,
yes. Just on that level of sophistication between what the guys have on the other side of the world and us, is it more on the content of the program, or how they deliver it, or how they unpack it in a very detailed and rigorous fashion, as you put it?
It's more the mode of delivery. What you tend to study undergraduate would be, you would have a book that is narrating what happens. This happens when you raise interest rates. This is what happens. This is what is expected. So you get that, how the system works in a narrated way, and then it teaches you what to expect, how the system. So on the other side, what they did, what I realized immediately was that let X be a member of set gamma, and then say, hang on. So it's a completely different language altogether. Your first question is this still economics? Or what is this? So they employ tools of mathematical analysis, differential equations, linear algebra, everything that you can think of. But it is once you get inside it, you immerse yourself into it, that you say, well, I'm still studying economics, but in a strange way, I'm still studying economics. So that is what I was just about to try to say, that even in the academic space, you have that spectrum where you have a completely abstract way of teaching economics or learning economics, and another practical way of learning economics, even in that space, academic, before we even cross over into the practicality side of things. So that is what I did. So fortunately, I was made head of department, I think sometime in 2007-8. One of the first things I did was to revamp the whole undergraduate program of National Economics Department. Still with that in mind, but I think there's something that we are not doing. There's some level of depth, there's some level of sophistication that renders our students unprepared. Meanwhile, I'm referring to my own experience, and so we revamped the program, reorganized it, and then deepened some of, for example, what we used to do in year 2. I moved that to year 1 and said, the economic students upon entry at NUL, this is the level they're going to enter into. So what should happen is that separate them from the rest of social sciences. Because in the past, you would have your social science first year, everybody doing basic economics. I said, for those that are coming to study economics, the level has been raised by 1 year upon entry. What used to be year 3 is now year 2. And then I sat down, designed curriculum for year 3. Something that was quite a bit technically much more than what we had. So that made a fresh entry. We moved things down. What used to be year 1, we said everyone can do this who wants to have a flavor of what economics is. But for those that want to study the subject, this is where we start. And then we introduced something at year 3 that was much more sophisticated, and then reorganized some other courses, and then the offerings in the final year. So I'm usually pleasantly surprised. Recently, I was the chief economist of the bank, and then we would get some application from some very smart individuals. When I go through the transcript, as recent as even 2020, 2019, 2021, that program that I left at NUL in 2008, it is still the taught undergraduate program. So it's something that I was quite pleased to see. I'm always pleased to see. When the Council of Higher Education was accrediting the NUL programs, somebody told me to say, do you know what they said about the economics program? I think they've brought in quality assessors from external quality assessors. So the feedback on the economics program was that this program is comparable with any economics program anywhere in the world.
Fascinating.
So that I was also very pleased by that as well. This is the feedback I got in 2016. I left the program there in 2008. It is still the program that is taught at NUL.
Okay. I think that's fascinating.
Yes.
So, in terms of broadly about our education system and our curriculum, if I understand you correctly, you implying that it needs some work or some improvement around the level of sophistication, its depth, its level of detail and rigor.
Well, I wouldn't be presumptuous and say that about the rest of the education system. This is what I purely informed by my own experience, what I did with the NUL economics program. But I think we read many reports that Lesotho has one of the high literacy rates. But literacy, I think literacy is evolving. In the past, people would speak about ability to read, ability to write, ability to do basic arithmetic, to make sense of written text. I think there was a slight shift from that to what was called functional literacy. So functional literacy was something that is slightly higher than your basic traditional literacy. To now the person being able to absorb and make sense of new information in different contexts. You have information that comes, and then the very same information in this context you understand in this way, but in a different context, you have to understand it in context as well. So and our ability to interact with the world around us is much more dependent on being able to understand different contexts. We are here, this is how things are done. But when you are this side, this is how you approach things. When you work with people from these villages, this is what you can expect. But the moment you cross over to the other side of the river, you have to expect different things and then interact and adapt. So that is, I think, what functional literacy then allows one to do.
So in 2023, right now, your own assessment, do you think our working population is functionally literate in different spheres of disciplines, in public sector, private sector, academics? Just your assessment.
Yeah, at that level, most certainly. At that level, most certainly. I think because we don't do periodic assessment. We don't do periodic assessments as a country, and here I'm speaking from a point of, not from a point of authority. I'm not an educator. I'm not even in the education field, but I think what is important is whether our school leavers are functionally literate. I think that is the most critical stage to say. As you leave school after grade 12, are you functionally literate or are you just barely literate? I think that is the acid test. And now you have digital literacy. That you are making a production here. I have no idea how this is made. It's picture, sound, this, and then and it has also become important in today's world. Digital literacy. Where do you get the data? Where do you get the information? How do you skim it to say this one is authentic, this one is not? That kind of literacy to be able to live and cope in the cyberspace. It has become also quite indispensable. Again, our school system, at that point, our school leavers digitally literate. That I'm not even able to say. But they are a smartphone generation. You have a 3-year-old on a smartphone. They know where everything is. A 2-year-old knows a YouTube tab on a smartphone just instinctively. So I think we have a because of the evolution in technology, we have a generation that is growing with some form of digital literacy as well.
Fascinating. Just to close off this chapter of lecturing or being in the academic space, I think you are still there, was almost close to a decade. Just to close it off, I wonder if you could share with us some of what you encountered as challenges, because you highlighted some of the achievements, such as being able to revamp the curriculum at the School of Economics at NAD. Can you flip it and talk to us about challenges that face the School of Economics broadly, or maybe if you have any specific ones that you can highlight in terms of the vibrancy and evolving and improving on the education system broadly, but specifically to the School of Economics and that.
The academic world was interesting in that one could work independently. The idea of teams was not so big. You strike a chord with somebody to collaborate on a research project. That's up to the two of you. Otherwise, you can work independently and do as much as you can, and still be able to make some significant strides. So I wouldn't say I encountered. I was a young professional wanting to be the best version of myself. Really, and so even the way I delivered my lectures, the way I would conduct class, the way I would arrange everything around my teaching and research was. I had my so you just do what you can. You have your ways, and then it was down to how high you wanted to go, how much you wanted to push yourself. But let me say, for me, it was a period of self-discovery. In that I was able to do quite a bit. At the time, I was still able to produce some academic research. I was able to produce some advisory reports for the government of Lesotho, what you'd call consultancies, advising the government on this, on that. I was able to do all those during that time, and I think one of the things that I'm proud of was recently I came across the Competition Act for Lesotho. I think it was enacted in 2020 or so. So that was the work I started in 2005, basically mapping the country's industrial structure and then characterizing each. Later on, coming up with a competition policy framework of what should happen. And I think after some time, just before I left NUL, some guys came and said, look, we are told you are the one who set up the framework, and so we wanted to now turn that into a law. That was around just before I left NUL in 2009. I said, okay, interesting. So we had a long chat about my thought process and why certain things I proposed them the way I did. And then 11 years later, the law is in place. So it was quite a happy ending for me that I started this journey.
Fascinating. And indeed, you ultimately left the NUL in 2009. And you went to LTA, Lesotho Communications Authority, and occupied the position of Executive Secretary, Universal Services Fund. This, I must admit, that Mohapi, I did not know. And I can bet a lot of people in the audience are not aware that you had this period where you went into communications, connectivity, digital. Earlier you spoke of digital literacy. I think it now falls nicely together. Can you share with us what the Universal Services Fund is and what your role was, and just touch on obviously what we topical now is cybersecurity, the digital divide in the context of Lesotho.
That was another interesting chapter of my life. So I applied for a job for some strange reason. The job said we want someone with an economics qualification, and I'm a lecturer at the university. And then I put in an application, went through the interview processes, and said, "We think we like you. Come in." And then I come in. The first thing I said, I'm told these are the regulations that just established the fund. They've been through, I think, the parliamentary structures, and then the fund is now up and running. Now we have to implement. It was nothing. You come into an organization that has its own work, and then this thing has to be established within this organization. This is the law that establishes it. Make it work. And then I said, okay, I haven't done this before. Where do I start? Okay. So I was reporting to the then chief executive officer. So, okay, I understand I have to make this work. I understand the objective of the fund, but setting up office, that's so it was quite helpful to say, look, you need procedures, you need systems. You need systems, you need procedures, you need a business plan, a strategy type of where this should go, what should be the first steps and the next steps, and then where should it go. And the role was just 1 year. The role was 1 year. The objective of the fund was we want everyone in Lesotho to be connected to the mobile network. Mm-hmm. Now, the issue is you have two mobile network operators that in this business for profit. And you have areas in these countries where there's no chance that they'll make profit, and they won't go there. So we have established this fund to bridge that gap. I said, okay. Then I cobbled operational procedures. I'm working alone and I'm thinking these procedures. So am I going to follow these procedures that I'm writing? Okay, fine. Let me write them. I cobbled some procedures. I cobbled a strategy. We were taken to the board. The board said, yes, go ahead. So I start. I say, Vodacom, let me see what you have in terms of coverage of this country. The other one was ETL, bring what you have. I ask our IT people at LCA, can you put these maps together, sort of overlay them one on top of the other? Mm-hmm. And then I want to see where the gaps are. IT assisted, did that. And then I was able to see the holes in the map. This part of the country is not covered, this part of the country is not covered, this part is not covered. Went back to the operators. Can I have your 2-year expansion plans? I get the 2-year expansion plans, and I'm able to say, here they are going, here they are going, here they are going, here they are going. Then I'm able to say, these parts, even after 2 years, they will still not be covered. So these are the parts I'm going to concentrate on. Then I speak to the chief executive officer, said, I need to travel to all these places and actually see what is happening. So that was interesting because now to prepare for that, I was sent do you know how to operate a 4x4? I said, 4x4. I know how to drive a car. I said, well, these are rural places, these are mountains, so you need a capable car, but a capable car and an incapable driver is a very, very wrong combination. So I'm sent for a week somewhere in Pretoria for a rigorous advanced 4x4 operation and preparation. Then I come back adequately prepared to say I can now overcome any obstacle. So I start driving around the country and then with an engineer, the authorities engineer, and then I come back with a report and proposals. And I think we had 14 million in the fund at the time. So these are the things I think we can start here, we can start here, we can start here. Take it to a subcommittee of the board that was established. And then within that day, I think we had 3 areas covered, more than half of the money depleted. So the only economics that I applied there was in terms of what we want to do, we want to administer subsidies to the operators to go where they wouldn't otherwise go. Mm-hmm. So the economist in me said, okay, let me think. This is a Dutch auction. So you have a concept called a Dutch auction, which is basically a Dutch auction. The way the auction is made is you start with the highest, mm-hmm. a very high price, and then you announce prices coming down. And then the first person that says, I'll take it for that price, is the one. So it's different from the auction that we are familiar with, where you go up and then until no one So this one, it is the first person that says that wins. So then I designed that mechanism that I sent to the two operators. Say, we want to cover this area and this area and this area and this area, network connectivity in these areas. Give me a bit of how much subsidy you need to do that. And then they submit bids closed. I open them. The one with the lower bid, what? So that was my work. So travel around the country, prepare reports, take them to the board, get approval, prepare bid documents. The bids will come, so they know that they are competing. That whoever bids lower gets awarded. So they had the expertise. I didn't. The expertise to build this communication towers and the infrastructure around that, making it work. I knew nothing about that. But I had this person that I was administering, that I was saying, here, next we are going there, next we are going there. So I did that for 3.5 years.
Fascinating. I think that's a very critical work because it speaks to that digital divide. Do you know now in 2023, do we have progress reports in terms of those areas that were isolated and hard to connect? Do you know the progress we've made in terms of connecting those remote areas?
Well, the connectivity in the country at the time was already quite high. I think we had close to 70% of the country covered network-wise, but there were these difficult places to reach. At the time when I left the fund, I think we had done a significant amount of work, such that we've had Botswana come here to Lesotho. We have had Tanzania come here to Lesotho to say, guys, we see that your fund is working and you're actually depleting the money that you have collected. And we want to understand how you did it. The challenge at the time was many countries had these funds, collecting money year after year after year after year, and then doing endless feasibility studies on what they are going to do, how they are going to deploy. So the fact that I was brought in on a 1-year contract, I couldn't risk saying we're going to do feasibility studies, and then before I knew it, 1 year would be over. So your contract is up, but what do we have? So I told you what I did. Bring the maps, bring the expansion plans, overlay this. Okay, I'm traveling out. I'm not staying in the office. And so very quickly, the fund gained prominence in the region and even internationally. That Lesotho seems to have gotten this right. They collect the money, they use the money. They collect the money, they use the money, and progress is showing. And so the chief executive would be quite honored a number of times to narrate the experience of Lesotho around Universal Service Fund in the Commonwealth Telecommunications Organization, the International Telecommunications Union. And so Lesotho was a minister because of the work we did there. And so when I left, one of the lessons I told the chief executive was, sometimes planning is a waste of time. That is my biggest takeaway. That's what I told him. My biggest takeaway is that sometimes planning is a waste of time. Just dive in and do what you have to do and then see what happens.
That was a fascinating transformation there from economics into project management. Let's now move to monetary policy and financial system. So you are now at the Central Bank of Lesotho, and it's now a decade ago since you came. So I want us to speak to the audience in a very simplified way, in a very practical fashion, just to set the scene. Let's try to have them appreciate why we need a monetary policy. Why? Because an average person knows the mandate of the central bank in Lesotho, but in terms of its practical implications and why we need price stability, why we need a functioning and well-structured financial system, that's not so clear to many of us. Let's start with how the two link, how we live on the ground, whatever we do, intersect with the financial system, the monetary policy, and of course the monetary authority. Why do we need that?